Part 5. I tricked you in the last video. I'm still in Ohio. I know I said it was the end of Ohio, but then I just stumbled into Yellow Springs. I didn't realize how close it was to where I already was. I had always heard things about Yellow Springs, like it was an energy vortex and it was a cool place, and it turns out it is a cool place. It's really cool.
I used to give it its banana-y fruity notes, which I very much love. And it's an example of how they would be taking something that would come from the garden that might need to be used back then and putting in a beer. There are starches and things like that contained in beets, potatoes.
So we had kind of an exciting day yesterday. I started off pretty early in the morning. Early morning visit to Western Springs, Ohio for breakfast. Then Clifton Mill, and then I had some time to kill in the morning, and I discovered the Springfield, Ohio Cultural Museum, which was a really inspiring and incredible museum, just full. I couldn't believe how many artifacts they had, going all the way back to the middle of the 1800s, and just really inspiring, really informative, and well laid out museum. So that was really fun. It's the 30th day of this road trip, and I only have a couple more days of driving to go before I get back to Chicago. I'm in the middle of Ohio right now at a Waffle House. I must have gone to about 15 Waffle Houses so far on this trip, and hopefully this is the last one of this month, this chapter. So a few more days, well, this one last day going through Ohio. Tomorrow I arrive back at my mom's house, where we are going to build a shelf and unload all of these faceting machines and shoot a lot of stuff for those. And a few more days in Chicago, packing up, and then flying to France to meet Victoria and Milo. I'm driving through Ohio, and this is the second time that I've seen a BART train from San Francisco, Oakland. I saw one of these in Texas getting transported. Now I'm seeing one in Ohio. Where are they coming from? I'm going east right now. So this obviously is not going to San Francisco, and it doesn't look new. What are they doing with them? Who knows? So after 5 hours of driving and a quick stop in Toledo for lunch, I finally made it back home. I'm at my mom's house, and it's time to reveal every faceting machine that I picked up along the way, pull them out, get them out of the car, and get them up onto a shelf and see what I got. After a morning of shelf building, unboxing, and organizing, I can now see what has been added to the Museum of Faceting Technology this year. So this is all the stuff that I picked up in the last couple months. We've got the Scott Faceter. This is from the 1940s. We've got the Facet Safari. This is from the 1970s, I think. We've got like a 80s or 90s era MDR. We've got a 70s era prismatic. We've got a 70s era Ultratech V2. I've got a 1940s era O'Brien faceter. I've got a brand new old stock 1980s Raytech Shaw just out of the box. I've got a 40s era, this is like second generation MDR Master. This is really cool. I've got a Taylor, this is also from the 1940s. I've got a Sapphire from the 1970s. I've got an Exacta head from the 1980s, And then I've got two of these flat lap kind of bathtub units. I think they're like Sears, Craftsman, Black & Decker, or one of these other sort of randoms, not really super branded, but interesting and definitely historical. So this has been a very good period of acquisition. I've also got the collected works of Bob Long. So it's been a pretty good couple of months. I'm starting to organize a bit of this stuff. Some of the cool stuff that I picked up in various places. A couple new copies of Tom Herp's book, the first edition of Diagrams for Faceting, the Basil Watermeyer diamond cutting book. Actually, I've always wanted a copy of this. A couple really vintage books, The Art of Gemcutting by Dake and Quartz Family Minerals by Dake. These are extra copies for me. I've got a huge collection now of the Columbia Willamette Facet newsletter going all the way back to the 70s. That's really cool. I've got John Broadfoot's book. Didn't have that before. Some Australian facet design books. A couple of the Long and Steel design books. These are pretty rare, I think. The Facetter's Gemcuts design books. Just kind of a compilation of different stuff that they publish in their newsletter. And more of that. And then I got this. This is really, really exciting for me. I got these at the Rice Museum outside of Portland. This is a little bit over 10 years of the Oregon Mineralogist, otherwise just known as the Mineralogist. These are super hard to find. I've been looking in libraries for these to scan, and now I've got my own copies from most of the early years. I think they started in 31 or 32, so there's only a couple years missing off of this, and then there's a few years missing along the way, but still, like, an awesome collection considering that it was free. They had a double of this, so they just gave them to me, and also a bunch of 1945 issues of Rocks and Minerals, which is just cool. And then also down here I've got a really extensive collection now of the U.S. Faceter Guild newsletter, and also a lot of these are Seattle Faceter Design Notes, which is the Long and Steel publication before they ever had any of their books, along with a couple other newsletters from different societies. So this is a real rare and solid collection of stuff, as well as, of course, the Long and Steel physical library, which is what's in those boxes down there. And another really cool thing, this is here on loan. These are letters and software from Fred Van Zandt. This is 2000. So Fred Van Zandt was a gem cutter in the kind of San Francisco Bay Area. He was friends with Long and Steel, also friends with Robert Strickland, who loaned me all these letters. So these are letters back and forth between Strickland and Van Zandt in the early 2000s and the late 90s. So this is another treasure trove on loan to me, including Gem Builder and Mac Gem, which were the first kind of softwares ever made for the Macintosh. He gave me these discs, and hopefully they still work. I'm going to try and find a USB 3.5-inch floppy drive and see if I can get these working. So that would be really cool.
We're at the Art Institute in Chicago. Scroll down.
We're time traveling into the 1930s to try to understand how funky it was. Got those 1930s vibes at the Berghoff. It's also kind of the Shining vibes. Dude, do you feel like you're in The Shining?
Yeah.
So I made it back to Chicago, back to the beginning of where this 2-month mini trip started. And it's time to relax for a few days, unpack my bag from the USA trip, repack my bag for the upcoming 3 months in France and England, and then I fly to Geneva to start chapter 2 of this year-long adventure.